Right, there's actually a player that is a classic problem child player that both of you share because you both in a team with him, and it is of course Nex from Germany. Now here's the thing,
fans. Nifty. Yeah.
No. Listen, it's not the episode for that. That's a different episode. Here's the thing, although you are both Nifty fans, so exactly, it's definitely not this episode. So no, here's the thing, right? The reason I ask about Nex is because he's a player where, like, unfortunately, it's so many years ago that he was like, the up and coming player that everyone was hyped about, and people just looked at his skills and they thought maybe he's going to be the next great player. That's like, at this point, you're a CS boomer if you remember that, because that was like 2015 or something. So, right, and the reason I say he's the problem child player is every person I've talked to who's played in teams with this guy is like, oh no, the skills were there. Like, that's real. That's not hype. Like, but so what was it? I want each year to sort of give me some thoughts on this. What was Nex's deal? What was the problem, you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to be too long on this one, but like you said, the skill was there. The guy was like, even back in 2016, he was like super sharp. He was like killing everyone everywhere, but I think he was too stubborn. And I think he was just too set on his own ways. That kind of hurt him at the end. He was, too stubborn for his own good. And I think he would rather, like, kind of go on his own way, like, and just he would pay any price for that, even if he doesn't play in any of the good teams, He would just kind of try to get his own thing, going. He was super stubborn and not very easy to communicate. Obviously, even myself, like, I wasn't easy back then as well. But I think that's the one of the things that kind of stopped him in his career.
Yeah, Nex is a very, very interesting person. Speaking about his skill, I think he was absolutely nuts. Called him the turret always in our team because he would just kill 3 people, 4 people, like if it's nothing. Like, I remember he had one clip with the where the enemies rush A, but they're coming from hard door and A main, and just with one clip makes like 4K. It was like mind-blowing, and it just looks so simple for him. But I think his biggest issue was that, like, obviously himself, that had problems with himself. What or why, I don't know. I don't also want to go too deep into it. He just stopped talking during games, which had like big impact on the team. Yeah. Also, he just went full quiet, and it was very hard for him to get him back into the zone. And what I think the bigger issue was, it wouldn't last for one game. It would last for a little bit longer period, which would obviously like have too negative impact on the team. But when we created Big, it was, for us, it was lucky because it was an atmosphere that he never experienced really, but was for us it was natural, and he was like surprised how it felt, like with this whole family thing, like being very good to each other, sharing things. That was like nothing that he had experienced before in his teams apparently, and it kind of gave him a little motivation, hope. I don't know if that reflects on his life or something. I really don't know, but I think personally he just was himself in his own way, and I think he was actually fucking insane. Like, genuinely, really insane.
He was literally like super sharp. His crosshair placement, everything was like super on point. I just this is where I kind of wish I had any kind of psychology education background for myself, because we as coaches, we didn't go to school to be coaches, right?
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
We just ended up like, okay, we know the game, and we think we know the game, and let's just be the coaches. Like, it's not only about like telling people where to aim, and where to run. It's the psychological part that we are all missing. That was the biggest part of my, I don't know, development. And obviously, I knew that I always knew the game on a decent level, but I felt I was always lacking in that psychological part of understanding the coaching, job. And this is something that all coaches need to go through, to actually become successful, good, or whatever the goal is for them, But like I said, nobody went to any school, any psychology backgrounds of education, anything was there. It's like you learn as you go, and you make mistakes as you go. I wish I was like a little bit more, educated in back then, so I can maybe, help him or me or whoever,
I can actually comment very briefly on that because he's actually a player where when I heard, like, listen, this might be a different version of his story. I know he actually claims now that this isn't the case. The rumour back in the day when he was in Mousebox was like, oh, maybe he has like problems on stage matches or gets like nervous or something. So when I heard this, I actually reached out to him at the time and I said to him, mate, if that's anything you're suffering from at all, like performance anxiety, basically, or you're having some issue, like it's different in scrims and then in the real game, I said, what you need to do is look into sports psychology. Like it's a whole field where even if you don't get a guy, like get some books, you know, like find some techniques. And basically, he just, like, I won't say like exactly what he said, but he essentially just, the gist of it was he just said, like, no, I've never looked into that. Like, what would you recommend or whatever? So I don't know if he ever did look into it, but that's one of those unfortunate things because I always say this, right? It sounds from the outside like it's some magic cure, like just get a sports psychologist, but it's like, it's not as simple as that. It's like, who needs it and how do they need it? Like, one thing a lot of these players, in my opinion, as to why a lot of them are in denial, like I've told this story many times, Device literally never believed he choked. He thought that was just some like meme that people made on Twitter, and his logic would be like, oh, I just had a bad game, you know, or I missed a shot there. And it's like, it's only when he became really good and worked through it all that he could admit like, oh yeah, of course I did. I now I look back and I know I had problems. But part of the issue, in my opinion, is because you look out at your pro peers, and some of them aren't having the same issue. Like they never needed a sports psychology. They just, you know, this guy's just good. Like it's like that Olafmeister quote when he's in Fnatic. They had some stupid quote like, oh, we don't have a sports psychologist because we just don't choke. It's like, listen, that sounds gangster if you just win all the games. Like, but some people do choke. So in that scenario, I think some people also are sort of like nervous or afraid to admit like they have a problem. So they try and just like, they live in denial. They just pretend, no, it was just a bad game, or, you know, oh, that opponent just got the better of me. Like, I feel like a lot of people who maybe could benefit, they just never thought about this area.
Yeah,
it didn't exist.
You need to find the right person to do it, right? You cannot just get anyone to actually just try to help you psychologically, right? It's like there needs to be someone who understands like the industry or the job that we are doing, right? There's a funny story. I think it was actually, we were discussing it a few days ago. It's the team, the Crazy, right? The Serbian the team that went deep in the major, right?
They almost made top 8, yeah.
Almost made top 8, right? They had this guy called a sports psychologist, right? And then one funny little thing, how he improved their mood, right? Because they ended up in practice, they always ended up in a bad mood, you know, bad vibe. It's like a few rounds in and people get tilted and the whole screen goes to shit. And like stuff like that. I mean, it's something that happens to a bunch of teams, right? So what this guy did, he was like, he was actually counting, standing behind them and counting who reacts poorly and who reacts like in a good way after the round ends, no matter like what they are. So he was counting the fist bumps, all this shit.
Okay.
And then people would actually know that he's counting, right? And they would just, even though if they don't want to, they just fucking fist bump.
Even though they're telling us.
He's counting, right? And then it actually became a fucking habit, and at the end, like, it helped them, like, you know, not getting into this shit state. But that's one of the things, like, one of the techniques, right, of these, like, people that are trying to, for them, it helped them, right? Obviously, they had a good tournament overall, but that's one of the funny little stories, you know, those people actually can help you with, you know.
I could believe that could work, by the way, because there's that super famous thing people always say, and it is true. Like, if you ever just force your face to do a really big smile, you get like 5% of the feeling of being happy. Like, your brain starts to sort of think, like, you know, it like follows suit or something. So even though that's like a small example, obviously, it's kind of true in a way. Like, and also yeah, and also in that scenario when they're thinking about, oh, this guy's counting me, well, they're not thinking about being tilted right there, are they? It's taken out for a moment. So,
he's going to do it, you know, he's counting. He doesn't want to be in the negative. He doesn't want to be in the red, right? He's just going to do even though he hates the guy next to him because he sold him out, he's fist bumping him, right? And then it became a habit, and it's like, you know, that thing. It was like a little story. It was funny as hell, dude.
Good. There's so many techniques, man. And I think like that, which team doesn't have a pop psychologist and actually has the money to invest in one guy and instead invest other stupid, I don't know, whatever shit. I think your team benefits so much, and it's not like 5%, it can be like actually 20-30% that this guy can change a team like during a longer period of time. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, those people, like, those are the problems, like the problems that CS players have now, right? Those are the problems that NBA, NFL teams, they got rid of those problems 40 years ago, you know, and we are experiencing that right now. So we need the proper help and proper like staff and everything so we can just go through these problems as well and then move the whole industry to another level, you know.
Yes.
Why a person like LeBron James invests like so much fucking money into people like telling him how to eat, how to train, how to do whatever.
I think the stat is that he spends like $1 million a year just on like health and this sort of stuff.
The dude is floating on the fucking like boards. He's fucking when he's playing. He doesn't feel like he's running. When I look at him, he's like floating on the fucking thing.
Crazy.
It's crazy how good it is.
I think you benefit so much.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.